Hi everybody. So somebody had sent this story to me. I think it was last night, and I figured I would cover it. Like I said, if you find any stories that you want me to cover, that you want me to talk about on my channel, please send them to me. If not, if you have your own channels, please send them. Please speak about them on your channels. I kind of take this as a challenge to any Latin YouTubers that are on here that may see me. Maybe you watch me, occasionally, and maybe you want to partake in doing something similar where you talk about things that are happening to the people within your Latin community. What I'm going to try to do is it doesn't matter to me if the people that these things happen to are Puerto Rican or not. They don't have to be Puerto Rican. Any Latino, it doesn't matter. I actually have two other stories that I found. One is one that's not necessarily trending like that, but it has been spoken about already on social media, and I figured that I would just cover the story just in case there's people on my channel that may not have heard about it. But this one is about a young man named Joel Acevedo, and he was also killed by a police officer. So the cover of this is Joel Acevedo's family pleads for answers in tragic officer-involved homicide case. Okay, and I'm just going to play this for everybody. I'm going to hike the volume up as much as possible.
Protesting in Milwaukee, a collective fight against racism and police brutality following George Floyd's death in Minneapolis.
A local mom and dad are now at the center of this fight after their son, Joel Acevedo, was killed. A Milwaukee police officer arrested for his death. Lauren Linder sat down with the Acevedo family in their home and has more on their quest for justice.
His sister, his brother, and then me.
These days, the Acevedo family finds comfort in this room, surrounded by images of Joel, feet away from his ashes. It's a place where they can come to reflect and share memories.
He had this energy and this smile about him that just lit up the more.
But more than a month after losing Joel, the pain is still fresh for his parents, Maribel and Jose.
The big piece of my heart is gone. You're frustrated, you're angry.
Joel died back in April after investigators say Milwaukee police officer Michael Mattioli placed him in a chokehold that went too far. According to the criminal complaint, Mattioli had some friends at his house near 45th and Cleveland while he was off duty. Mattioli told police after going to sleep, he woke up to find Joel going through the pockets of his pants and that Joel punched someone in the house. Joel's parents reject that story.
It wasn't a fight like that. It was Joel defending himself, trying to go back.
That's terrible.
And they held him.
They believe the body camera footage and 911 call will prove that.
Joel was begging to leave, was asking, please let me go home. I will leave, please let me go home.
He's a
Those
baby.
were his last words.
Only 25 years old.
Are also urging police to arrest the witnesses who they say played a role in the crime. They're asking the department to fire Mattioli as well.
He's walking free and getting paid. It makes me sick. I'm just sick.
Mattioli posted bond before prosecutors upgraded his charge to reckless homicide. His job status is now in the hands of the Fire and Police Commission, which says it's committed to a transparent investigation. Mayor Tom Barrett has called for Mattioli's immediate termination more than once, most recently after the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis.
We feel the pain, we know what it is. The difference is that his was publicized, and that's so wrong. But our son, it was done behind doors, closed doors.
Despite this, the Acevedos and their lawyer, B. Ivory Lamar, feel the case in Minnesota could help them here at home.
It does reflect some light to this case.
We hope that these type of instances represent a change amongst America and how police departments operate, how they terminate these bad actors when they do happen.
In response, Mattioli's attorney released a statement that reads in part, "This is categorically not a case of a white cop abusing his position of power against a person of color. Mr. Acevedo's unforeseen death is a tragedy, but it is not the product of systemic failures or racism."
How do we know that? How do we know that, right? If you heard that, that was my daughter in the background. But how do we know that for a fact that it's not, that this is not the product of that, right?
I'm just upset. I'm upset how the system treated us.
It's terrible.
It's taken the Acevedos some time to speak out, but they're now going public in the hopes of getting answers, and will keep fighting until they get them.
We're not going to stay quiet. Even if it costs me my life, I'm not going to stay quiet.
Mattioli remains out on bond and full suspension from the Milwaukee Police Department. He'll be here in court for his initial appearance on June 24th. If convicted, he faces up to 60 years behind bars. Reporting in Milwaukee, Lauren Linder, G24 News.
So,
Local businesses are
I'll just start reading from here now, just in case. So, Milwaukee. A suspended Milwaukee police officer accused of killing a 25-year-old man while he was off duty will make his first appearance in court later this month. That's what the story just said. The family of that victim continues to question what happened as they pursue justice against that officer. These days, the Acevedo family finds comfort in a room surrounded by images of Joel, feet away from his ashes. It's a place where his parents, Maribel and Jose, have learned to reflect and share memories. He had this energy and this smile about him that just lit up a room, Maribel said. However, more than a month after losing their son, the pain is still fresh, of course. It feels like a big piece of my heart is gone. You get frustrated, you get angry, Maribel said. Investigators say 32-year-old Michael Mattioli is responsible for the death of Joel Acevedo and is now facing a charge of reckless homicide. They say Mattioli put Joel in a chokehold that went too far. According to the criminal complaint, the officer had friends at his home near 45th and Cleveland for a gathering he was off duty on April 19th. Mattioli told police that he woke up the next morning to find Acevedo going through the pockets of his pants and that Acevedo also punched another person in the house. Joel's family rejects that story. It wasn't a fight like they're painting it. It was Joel defending himself, trying to go home, and they held him, Jose said. His family believes the body camera video in the initial 911 call will prove that in court. Joel was begging to leave, was asking, "Please let me go home. I will leave. Please let me go home." Those were his last words, his father said. Jose and Maribel are also urging police to arrest the witnesses who they say play a role in the crime. They're asking the department to fire Mattioli as well. He's walking free and getting paid. It makes me sick, just sick, Jose said. Mattioli posted bond before prosecutors upgraded his charge to reckless homicide. His job status is now in the hands of the City Milwaukee Fire and Police Commission, which has publicly committed to transparent investigation. Mayor Tom Barrett has called for Mattioli's immediate termination, more than once, more recently after the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. We feel the pain, we know what it is. The difference is that his was publicized, and that's so wrong. But our son, it was done behind doors, closed doors, Jose said. Despite this, the Acevedos and their lawyer, the Ivory Lamar, feel the case in Minnesota could help them here at home in Milwaukee. It does reflect some light to this case, Maribel said. We hope that these type of instances represent a change amongst America and how police departments operate, how they terminate these bad actors when they do happen, Lamar said. In response to Mattioli's attorney, Michael Hart released the following statement. There is no measure of equivalence between the charges against Mr. Mattioli and the senseless killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, or the larger and real systemic issues underlying the nationwide protest that Mr. Floyd's death has sparked. This is categorically not a case of a white cop abusing his position of power against a person of color. Mr. Mattioli and Mr. Acevedo were friends, and Mr. Acevedo was an invited guest to Mr. Mattioli's home until he was caught trying to steal and physically assaulted another. Mr. Acevedo's unforeseen death is a tragedy, but it is not the product of systemic failures or racism. There is a sad irony in the fact that for so many years the powers that be have turned a blind eye to widespread deprivation of citizens' civil rights in the streets, only now to charge an off-duty officer confronted with criminality in his own home, exercising the same rights and privileges that all citizens possess. It is, in fact, fair to question whether Mr. Mitoli would have been charged if he was not a police officer, but instead only a homeowner confronted with a similar situation. I'm just upset how the system treated us, Jose said. It's taken the Acevedos time to speak out, but they're now going public in the hopes of getting answers about the death of their son. We're not going to stay quiet, even if it costs me my life. I'm not going to stay quiet, Jose said. Mitoli remains on full suspension from the Milwaukee Police Department. He's set to make his initial appearance in court on June 24th. If convicted, he could face up to 60 years behind bars, and that was exactly what the story said. So, you know how I like to do my little afterthoughts on things. So, you know, I'm not surprised that I'm finding stories and that people are sending me things. I think what I think I'm more frustrated about is the fact that we don't hear about these things like that. And that when the deaths of people from our group happen, from the hands of these police officers, basically any of these people, that there's no outcry, that there's no protests, that that our people aren't out there in masses saying, hey, where's the justice for our people? And the reason why I think that we're not out there screaming that is because we don't hear about this enough. This is a local news story. I didn't hear about this everywhere, And the other stories that I'm going to talk about, again, I didn't hear about them you don't hear them on, they're not plastered around, they're not nationwide, the stories that are the other stories that I'm going to talk about. And it's like we have to dig for the things that happen to us, and this is not right. This man, this is a Latino man, and the way he was, who he was, and how he looked didn't protect him at all. It didn't protect him from what happened to him. And according to this story, it's as if they're making this cop out to be like he was just doing his job and that he was just defending his house. So let's say if the instance was that this guy was pickpocketing something from his house. Let's say that that's you're gonna kill the dude for pickpocketing something? Really? You're gonna just straight up kill the dude? I honestly don't believe the story either. But I would say, even if that was the case, that's pretty excessive, And they basically made it sound out to be like this guy was like going out of his way to like steal and rob from the guy and like hurt the guy. And then you hear the complete opposite from the parents that know that he was like begging to go, begging to be left alone, begging to leave the house, and this cop didn't let up. He didn't want him to leave. He wanted to handle the situation the way he wanted to handle it. And if there's anything in the footage that shows, and I already know that if there's anything in the footage that even seems as though this guy is pickpocketing this cop, which I doubt, but if there's anything that even shows that it may seem that he was doing that, this cop is going to get away with it. This cop is going to get away with it. I know it. So, and it's sad. It's just sad that these things aren't making the headlines the way that they should. And as I read, it's like his own parents didn't even want to talk about it, I guess. It's like now they're breaking their silence. And now they're talking about it, And I think that's one of the issues that we have as a group, is that we're not that vocal. I think that's something that I could say that I think most Latinos have in common, is that we're kind of, we're raised to be, just to basically be quiet, do our job, and that's it, and just kind of to just kind of be meek and just stand in the background, and even to help other people, because we are raised to help other people. So in a way, I can see us putting the plights of other groups and other people before ours, because that's the way we're raised, and I think with everything that's going on, in a way, this is the time for brown people, for Latin people to say, hey, we need to start showing the injustices that have been happening with our group also. The media needs to highlight these things also. We do not have the privilege that is propagated out there. We do not. And the reason why it's easy to propagate an ideology that we have privilege is because the news media doesn't promote and doesn't push out there the aggressions that happen to us. The only time you hear about the aggressions that happen to us is when we speak about it on social media platforms. So I think it's about time that we start saying, hey, we deserve to have our stories told also. And this whole thing with police brutality, again, these cops are not just doing these things to people of color. They're doing these things to white folks too. These cops are in a position of power, and I think the combination of that and them not getting the appropriate justice for their crime, they're not getting the appropriate punishments for their crimes. I think that that's going to lead them to keep doing what they do. So I think that the more that we speak up, that Latin people speak up and say, hey, these things are happening to us too. I know I'm totally rambling right now, and hopefully people are still listening to me, but I think if we just kind of stay together and be like, hey, it's as big of a group that we possibly can. This is why I'm saying, for the Latin people that have bigger platforms than me, hello, talk about these things too. Your platforms are bigger than mine. I have a very small platform. I'm very grateful that I'm getting subscribers still, and thank you all for the new subscribers. I know my channel is a cluster F of different things. Right now, this is kind of like the little trajectory that I'm going on, because I just feel that it's the right thing to do. And I might talk about other things in the future when this stuff, maybe when I believe that these stories are not as popular, or these things die down. But right now, this is what needs to be said, and I believe this is where the focus, in my opinion, needs to be on my channel. So I'm trying with my small little voice on here to get the word out about certain things. And may this man rest in peace. This is awful. Only 25 years old. He had his whole life ahead of him. It's just it's just so terrible, but so sad. Anyway, I'm gonna go for now. Thank you guys all for watching. Again, if you hear stories, if you want me to talk about a certain story, leave it in my comment section. And I guess I'll see you all in my next video. Thanks, guys. Bye.